Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be having a look at the modes of limited transposition, as they're called, a system employed by the famous French 20th century composer Olivier Messiaen. Fascinating composer. He has all sorts of influences on his work, including birdsong, raga rhythms, all sorts of fascinating influences that come to bear in his style. And of course, it's one of the very interesting developments in the 20th century with the breakdown of major and minor tonality that went on soon after the turn of the century. Composers reacted in all sorts of ways. So French composers like Debussy, for example, became what's been known as an impressionist composer. Not a title he particularly favoured, but there we are. And he was into trying to use different kinds of scales, like writing music in the whole tone scale, for example. And he was interested in music of other cultures, music of Java, the gamelan, and so on. So Messiaen's somewhere sitting in this tradition, trying to find new ways to write, but trying to find new systems as well. Maybe not wanting to go down the same route as Schoenberg, Berg and Webern in the Second Viennese School, who went down the whole topic of serialism, organising, if you like, equal rights for all 12 semitones of a scale, organising them in a particular order and working a piece reasonably strictly with what was known as the note row or the tone row. Messiaen wanted to be a bit freer than those serialists, but maybe he was inspired somewhere by the Debussyan approach and thought, well, I wonder what scales I could use that could be the basis of composition. So he came up with these modes. Okay, so modes is something we know about, but Messiaen's modes are nothing to do really with the Aeolian mode or the Dorian mode or any of those modes that we know about. These are his own. And why are they of limited transposition? Because when you take one of his modes, you can transpose it up a semitone, a half step, up a tone, a whole step. But there comes a point where you come back to where you started. So there's a limited number of transpositions that you can apply to these modes, and I'll explain that in relation to the first mode in just a moment. But really this video is all about just introducing you to Messiaen's modes of limited transposition. What are they? What's going on? How are they kind of constructed? And then when you listen to the music of Messiaen, you can have a deeper understanding of where he was coming from. If you're wanting to try writing some music using these modes of limited transposition, well, at the end of this, you'll know what they are. And that's obviously a very useful thing if you're going to try writing using these. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first mode. So you can see it here at the top of the screen. And the first mode sounds like this. And as soon as you hear that, you might think, hang on, that's a bit familiar. That sounds like a whole tone scale. Yes, it is. C to D is a whole tone. D to E is a whole tone. E to F sharp is a whole tone. F sharp to G sharp is a whole tone. G sharp to A sharp is a whole tone. A sharp to C is a whole tone, and we've come back to where we've started. So it's simply a whole tone scale. So you could say, well, Debussy was writing a lot of music using a whole tone scale. He was writing a lot of music using the first mode of limited transposition. So we can kind of see where Messiaen perhaps plugs in at one level to where Debussy left off. Now, Messiaen likes to kind of think about these things in terms of groups of notes as well, how you might have 2-note cells, 3-note cells, 4-note cells or whatever, in terms of how you might construct your melodic writing, your harmonic writing. And he likes to think of this first mode as 6 groups of 2 notes each. So you get the first 2 notes as one group, then D to E is another group, E to F sharp is another group, F sharp to G is another group, G sharp to A sharp is another group, A sharp to C. So you've got these 6 groups of 2 notes, and you see how one group overlaps with the next. Now, limited transposition. Let's explain this in relation to the first mode, and as soon as you get the principle, you'll see how it works with the other modes. If we take this whole tone scale, this first mode, we can start it on C, and we're going to get C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C. We could transpose that up a semitone, couldn't we? And we end up with C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. So that's a perfectly legitimate transposition. But as soon as I go up another semitone or another half step, I start on D, and then I'm going to have D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C, D. Well, as soon as I've done that, you realize we're back in square one, because we're now using that mode all the way through, and then we're just putting a D on the end of it to finish. So we're back with the original transposition. So there are only two possible transpositions of the whole tone scale. Once you've started it on C and run it for whole tones, or started it on C sharp and run it whole tones, after that you're back where you started, because D takes you back to the first version, and D sharp or E flat takes you back to the second version. So you've only got these two possible transpositions. So that's how the first mode works. Okay, let's have a look at the second mode, this octatonic mode, and see what's happening in this case. So this is how this one sounds. C, D flat, E flat, E natural, G flat, G natural, A, B flat, C. Okay, so how does that work out? Well, C to D is a semitone or a half step. D flat to E flat is a tone or a whole step. E flat to E, semitone. E to G flat, tone. G flat to G, semitone. G to A, tone. A to B flat, semitone. B flat to C, tone. So you've got this kind of usual combination in a scale of tones and semitones, but you see how this one works out. And when you work out the possible number of transpositions on the second mode, you find you've got 3 transpositions. And this time we're perceiving this as 4 groups of 3 notes. So you can kind of look at the first 3 and then 3rd, 4th, 5th, and the next 3 and the next 3 is one way of doing it. Or you can look at it starting from the second and then having those groups. So it doesn't really matter. You could see this is one group, and then this is the next, this is the next, this is the next. Or if you take the lower brackets, here's one group, here's another group, and here's another group. So you see how that works. You get these 4 groups of 3 notes each. So that's the second mode. Let's move on to the third mode. What does the third mode sound like? Okay, so what's going on there? C, D, E flat, E natural, G flat, G natural, A flat, B flat, B natural, C. Okay, so C to D, there's a tone or a whole step, but then D to E flat, semitone, half step, E flat to E natural, semitone, half step, E natural to G flat is a tone, a whole step, G flat to G natural, semitone, half step, G natural to A flat, semitone, half step, A flat to B flat, a tone or a whole step, B flat to C, a semitone or a half step, B to C, a semitone or a half step. So many more semitones there in the third mode, which is why, of course, you end up with more notes. 4 possible transpositions will work out with the third mode. And now we're looking at 3 groups of 4 notes. So here's the first group. Here is the second group. And the third and final group. So you see how that pattern kind of works out there. Okay, so you see how you've got that. You've got this tone here, semitone, semitone. So when you come here, you've got tone, semitone, semitone, haven't you? And here you've got tone, semitone, semitone. So you've got the same pattern repeated 3 times in terms of the tones and semitones, or the whole steps and half steps. So you see how you get these 3 groups of 4 notes within the mode. Okay, onwards and upwards. Here comes the 4th mode. So what have we got this time? So C, D flat, D, F, G flat, G natural, A flat, B, C. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, we've got C to D flat, semitone or a half step, D flat D, semitone or a half step. Then interestingly, D to F is actually a minor third, isn't it? And then we've got the semitone from F to G flat. Then you see what we've got. We've got G flat to G natural, so again that's a semitone. G to A flat, again that's a semitone. And then A flat to B, well, it's an augmented second, but it's the equivalent, N harmonic equivalent of a minor third. And then we've got a semitone to finish. So you see why we've got these 2 groups. You know, there's the first group, here's the second group, following the same pattern, the intervals between notes the same twice. And there are 6 possible transpositions of the 4th mode. Okay, moving onwards to the 5th mode. This is what this one sounds like. Okay, so C, D flat, F, G flat, G natural, B, C. We've got this organized in 2 groups this time. So this time we've got the first 4 notes in one group and then the second 4 notes in the next group. How does that work? Well, can you see semitone from C to D flat, but semitone there as well. D flat to F is a major third. G to B is a major third. And F to G flat semitone, B to C semitone. So the same intervals panning out again. And it's interesting, you know, that we've started to move into gaps of a third between neighbouring notes in the mode. So whereas, you know, you look at modes 2 and 3, there are more notes, it's a bit more chromatic. Now we're beginning to thin it out a little bit, aren't we? So by the 5th mode, we've got fewer notes, partly because we've now got some thirds in the mix. So that's the 5th mode. 2 more to go. So here is the 6th mode of limited transposition. So what have we got this time? We've got C, D, E, F, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. How does that work out? We've got 2 groups. There's the first group, and here is the second group. And again, you can see how this works out. C to D is a tone, F sharp to G sharp is a tone. D to E is a tone, G sharp to A sharp is a tone. E to F is a semitone, A sharp to B is a semitone. F to F sharp is a semitone, B to C is a semitone. So there we go with that. So it's interesting how they all have their own kind of distinctive character, their own feel to them. But you start off with this one thinking in the 6th mode, well, it's going to be a scale of C major, C, D, E, F. And you think, okay, we're there, aren't we? Oh, now what? F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. So it kind of feels slightly less radical, if you like, than some of those earlier modes. But the second half of it obviously takes it in a new direction. But again, we've got 6 transpositions available in the 6th mode, but the 2 groups is how that works out. Likewise, the 7th and final mode also has 6 transpositions and 2 groups. What we've got this time in terms of notes, more notes here, a bit more chromatic. C, D flat, D natural, E flat, F, G flat, G natural, A flat, A natural, B, C. So you can see it's quite closely packed, isn't it? You know, that if we just take the first group, you've got a semitone between C and D flat, you've got a semitone between D flat and D natural, you've got a semitone between D and E flat. Between E flat and F, you've got a tone, and between F and G flat, you've got a semitone. And of course, that pattern replicates. So we've only got one place where there's a tone. Do you see these are the places in each group where you've got a tone? Otherwise, there's a lot of semitonal writing there. So it's another quite compact one. So the purpose of this video is simply to get a grip on, well, what are these modes of limited transposition? Because people often get in touch and say, well, I've heard of this guy Messiaen and I've heard about these modes of limited transposition, but I don't know what they are. And what does it mean, limited transposition? And what's the difference between one mode and another? And if you've come across these groups, well, what are these groups? You know, how does it work? And of course, this idea of replicating a pattern of tones and semitones between one group and the next is how that ticks. So I hope that's useful in simply explaining what these modes of limited transposition are about and just giving you a handle on, well, this is the basis from which Messiaen wrote his music. So hope that's been of some interest to you, either in terms of learning to appreciate what these things are, learning to appreciate Messiaen's style a little bit, or because you might be interested in trying to write your own music using these modes of limited transposition. And if you've enjoyed this video, do have a look at www.mmcourses.co.uk, where you can find out much more about what Music Matters has to offer you. All sorts of excitements on there, blogs, online courses, information about our Maestros group. So have a click, have a search around. Lots of online courses covering music theory, analysis, orchestration, harmony, you name it. We've got lots of stuff out there that might be of interest to you. And if you click on Maestros while you're on the homepage, that will tell you about our international community of musicians and how there are so many perks. For example, reduced discounts on courses that we offer, how you can be part of a monthly live stream where we meet to learn together. We can share in a live chat and I'll do a lot of teaching input there, going into much more detail on things. And also how you can submit your own compositions or your own recorded performances, arrangements, harmony exercises, whatever you like, and have individual feedback as part of the live stream, which we share with this wonderful group of musicians, all very supportive of each other. And it's great to just know that you're part of a musical journey in which these other people are engaged. And it's a terrific way to share with them. Anyway, lots of things to look at on that website, www.mmcourses.co.uk.